Hello, I'm Lisa Andrea of the League of Women Voters, Long Beach area. On October 30th, 2016, the League partnered with Music Untold to present the Woman's Right to Vote celebration. This event commemorates the passage of California Proposition 4 on October 10th, 1911, and the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution ratified on August 18th, 1920. The League of Women Voters is a 101-year-old nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We do not support or oppose any political party or any candidate. We do, however, take action on selected government issues in the public interest. We empower voters, defend democracy, and envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. And we believe in the power of women to create a more perfect democracy. Featuring guest speakers, along with music and dance performances, the show was held at the historic bandshell at Recreation Park. We hope you enjoy this revisit of the 2016 Women's Right to Vote celebration.
Please rise for the presentation of colors by the California State Military Reserve, California National Guard.
Forward, ball, live, live, live. One time, ball. Color guard, ball. Left, face. Present, colors.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order, colors. Wait, face. Forward, ball. Live, live, live.
I'd like to welcome to the stage John Malvo, President of the Long Beach Central Area Association and Music Untold.
Thank you for attending I'm John Malvo, president of the Long Beach Central Area Association. We're privileged to partner with the League of Women Voters Long Beach area for the celebration of women's right to vote. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Long Beach City College trustee Vivian Malauulu.
It's an honor to be invited to participate in this event. Thank you for being here, rain or shine. It's a privilege for me to be able to represent Long Beach City College and to extend a hearty congratulations to the organization for hosting such an important event in our community. I am thrilled to see students here and young people here. A little bit biased. My daughter actually sings with the Grace Choir at Poly High School, but she's not here. She's at a softball tournament in Florida. So I'm gonna have to FaceTime her so she can see where she would be doing. I want to share with you very, very briefly the importance of being able to vote for someone like me. I was not born in this country. I was born in Honduras, and when my mom became an American citizen, I was 13 years old, and that year my mom was so excited to be able to vote, and I've never forgotten that. I never forgot the excitement that an immigrant woman from another country had being able to walk to our neighborhood elementary school to be able to vote. And ever since then, I made sure that I went out and I voted, and I recruited people to vote, and I instilled the importance in my own children of why they should also vote. As a teacher, being able to register students to vote has also been a privilege to me, and making sure that they go out and help register and recruit their friends also. So please do the same. I know that last week was the deadline to register to vote for this election on the 24th, but still, help and encourage people to get out there and vote, and to remind them of how important it is for the suffrage movement and the women who fought so hard. Driving over here, I was telling my little boys how in California, women were able to vote long before women on the East Coast, and they didn't understand why the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920, but women were able to vote in California in 1911. And I explained to them that the country was not unified, in their views on allowing women to vote for many, many years. And it took a lot of struggle and a lot of sacrifice. Don't let that be in vain, and make sure that November 8th, we all get out there and vote. Thank you again, Mr. Malvo, and thank you for hosting this important event. Enjoy. Thank you.
Representing the Long Beach Unified School District, here is District Board Member Diana Craighead, representing District 5.
Thank you, everyone. When I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I thought about the women's suffrage movement and how it started and why it started. And I thought about how that half the population was excluded from realizing a full citizenship. And then I thought about what it's like to be excluded. And being excluded means you feel less than. And for some of us, feeling less than is a call to action. And that's exactly what happened over 100 years ago. And we know in our hearts that the perception of being less than is wrong, that having rights and representation should not be based on gender or race, and that equal access to education and career opportunities should be available to everyone. I'm grateful for the courageous women who fought. It took many years. It was a hard-fought battle. They had to, suffer. There were many sacrifices that were made. In order to get the president's attention, they chained themselves to the fence at the White House. They went on hunger strikes. They were arrested and jailed. There were a lot of hardships that they had to endure. And I have personally benefited from the passage of the 19th Amendment. I hold a public office, and there are other women here that hold public office. And I figure we represent about half the population. So I would like to thank all those women who came before me who made that possible. Thank you.
Coming to the stage next, I'd like to introduce the City of Long Beach prosecutor, Mr. Doug Halbert.
It all started with a train ride, and it ended with a mother to her 24-year-old son. Of course, the Reconstruction Amendments left out women. In 1870, the 15th Amendment to the United States prohibited states from denying citizenship and the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. 2 years earlier, the 14th Amendment had penalized states that denied the right to vote to men aged 21 and over, without any mention for the right to vote for women. And then this United States Supreme Court ruled definitively on the issue by interpreting the 14th and 15th Amendments as protecting the rights of men to vote, regardless of color, but not affecting the rights of women, which meant that states were on their own to decide whether each individual state wanted to allow women to vote or not. Almost all the states did not allow women to vote at all. In 1847, Aaron Sargent and Ellen Clark were teenage sweethearts in Massachusetts who decided to get married. There was just one problem. Aaron had no money. While trying to build a career in the newspaper business, Aaron was struggling. Gold was discovered in California, and Aaron came to our state and earned enough money to marry his sweetheart. He returned to the East Coast. He married Ellen Clark, who was now Ellen Sargent, and she moved out west with him. Ellen Sargent was no ordinary woman. She was a strong abolitionist and an advocate for women's rights. A few years after marrying Ellen, Aaron became a lawyer. In 1856, Aaron Sargent was elected district attorney. His political and legal career flourished, and he was eventually elected to the United States House of Representatives. And in 1872, Aaron Sargent was elected to represent California in the United States Senate. This is where the train ride comes in, because in 1872, after his election, Ellen and Aaron Sargent decided to move to Washington, D.C. and travel by train. Ellen invited a friend to travel with them. That friend, Susan B. Anthony, impressed Aaron Sargent and convinced the brand new Senator Sargent that he ought to support women's rights and do everything he could to advocate for the right to vote. Immediately, Senator Sargent introduced language into different bills in order to trigger this right legislatively. Eventually, by 1878, he introduced the 29 words that would become the 19th Amendment. That constitutional amendment sat in committee for 15 years. Occasionally, it was passed to the floor of the Senate and voted down immediately. So for many, many years, the 19th Amendment sat dormant in the Senate. Then a movement started, mostly in the West, but it's sprung across the United States, allowing state by state women to vote. Not majority of states, but in many states. Congress decided to act with the urging of President Woodrow Wilson in 1919. On May 21st of that year, the House of Representatives passed the 19th Amendment. In June of that year, the Senate passed the 19th Amendment, leaving it up to the individual states to ratify this amendment. Many states did immediately. In fact, within 3 days, there were states voting on ratifying the 19th Amendment. Within a few months, it had 35 states ratification in support of the 19th Amendment, one short of what it would need to make this an official amendment to the United States Constitution. None of the southern states had approved it. After intense weeks of lobbying and debate, the House in Tennessee decided to take a vote on the bill. After the announcement was made, a number of women rights advocates came to Nashville to press their case. When the vote came, it was passed by one house and left to one remaining house in Tennessee. Those who supported suffrage wore wore yellow roses and yellow sashes. Those opposed wore red roses on their lapels. One young man who wore a red rose was named Harry Burns, a 24-year-old man just elected to the House legislature. And Harry Burns fell squarely in the camp wearing the red roses that did not want to see women vote. On the final day, we reached a deadlock, and it appeared that the 19th Amendment would not be ratified. It was at that time that a letter was given to Harry Burns from his mother, Phoebe Ensminger Burns, known to her family and friends as Miss Feb. She referenced the new leader of the women's suffrage movement, Carrie Chapman Cath. She told her son the following: "Hurry and vote for suffrage. Don't keep them in doubt. I noticed some of the speeches against. They were bitter. I have been watching to see how you stood, but have not noticed anything yet." And she ended it by saying, "Be a good boy and help Miss Cat put the rat in ratification." Still sporting his red boutonniere and clutching his mother's letter, Burns said aye so quickly that it took his fellow legislators a few moments to realize what had just happened. What had happened is that Tennessee became the first state in the South and the last state of the 36 needed to ratify the 19th Amendment. It said that his colleagues were so angry with him that he hid out in the attic of the state building so no one could find him. The very next day, Burns defended his last-minute reversal in a speech to the Assembly. What he said was, "I believe we have a moral and legal duty to ratify." But he also made no secret of Miss Feb's influence. He said, "I know that a mother's advice is always safest for her boy to follow, and my mother wanted me to vote for ratification."
All right, we are moving on with our program, and I'd like to welcome to the stage Nicole Bennett of the League of Women Voters, Long Beach area.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start off by thanking Music Untold and John Malvo for inviting the League of Women Voters here to partner with them and celebrate women's suffrage. And I'd like to thank all of the speakers and attendees who've joined us today. It is extremely important to remember and honor those who dedicated their lives to getting women the right to vote, and also to continue to celebrate the accomplishments of countless women and their supporters since the achievement of women's suffrage. I'm going to give a brief history of the origins of our organization, the National League of Women's Voters, and I'm also going to touch on some familiar issues that the League has supported throughout its years. And I just wanted to say I'm a relative newbie of the League. I've joined in the last couple of years, and it's been a great honor to be part of this organization. The women who are part of it are just amazing. And so researching and preparing for this presentation was a real learning experience for me, and I just wanted to say I feel honored to be able to present it here today. The League of Women Voters was officially formed 6 months before the ratification of the 19th Amendment. The year before the official formation of the League, Carrie Chapman Catt, president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association, proposed at their 50th annual convention in St. Louis, Missouri, that, quote, "a League of Women Voters be created to finish the fight and aid in the reconstruction of the nation." Because the 19th Amendment had yet to be ratified by the necessary 3/4 of the states, and there were still fierce fights happening in states that was just mentioned, they had not yet adopted women's suffrage. The earliest incarnation of the League was aimed at organizing at the state and national level to aid in the 19th Amendment's ratification. The following year, on February 14th, 1920, the League was made official. At a convention in Chicago, 2 national suffrage organizations, the National Council of Women Voters and the National American Women's Suffrage Association, joined forces. Kat laid out the goals of the League to, quote, unite all existing organizations of women in an effort to create and pass legislation which will protect coming movements from suffering the untoward conditions which have hindered for so long the coming of equal suffrage. It took very little time after its formation for the League to begin organizing at the state and the local level. Our local chapter of the League began here in Long Beach in 1924 and has maintained an active presence in the community ever since. For close to a century now, the League has dedicated itself to studying policy and legislation, educating voters, participating in activism at both the national and the grassroots level, and engaging conversation and debate amongst candidates for political office at all levels. Shortly after its formation in 1921, the League's first major legislative victory was to pass the Shepard-Towner Act, which provided federal funding for maternal and child care programs. Throughout the 20s, the League was dedicated to educating the country's newly enfranchised voters by conducting studies, facilitating surveys, creating candidate questionnaires, and holding meetings where citizens could meet with potential representatives. They were also actively involved in Get Out the Vote campaigns, encouraging women to begin exercising their hard-won right. In the 30s and 40s, the League worked in support of the establishment of the Social Security and Food and Drug Acts, as well as the United Nations. We were one of the very first organizations in the country to be recognized by the UN as a non-governmental organization, or an NGO. During the post-war years, the League supported the creation of the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, more familiarly known as NATO. During the McCarthy eras of the 1950s, the League fought to protect individual liberties in the face of national government censorship and suspicion. Then President Percy Maxim courageously testified before Congress, stating, quote, I believe tolerance and respect for the opinions of others is being jeopardized by men and women whose instincts are worthily patriotic, but whose minds are apparently unwilling to accept the necessity for dissent within a democracy. In the 60s, the League stood behind those advocating for civil rights and dedicated itself to ensuring the equality of opportunity and equal access to education, employment, and housing. And the League's positions on civil rights led to the organization actively supporting the Equal Rights Amendment throughout the 1970s. During the late 70s and 80s and early 80s, the League sponsored 3 presidential debates, the first of which aired in 1976 and, fun fact, later received an Emmy. I thought that was really interesting. Also in the 70s, the League's long-standing interest in the environment resulted in the development of a host of environmental positions and water, waste management, land use, and energy. Over the next 2 decades, the League was involved in the passage of the Voting Rights Act amendments, the Tax Reform Act, and National Voter Registration, or Motor Voter Act. They also increased their focus on campaign finance reform, established international programs which engaged and supported women leaders from across the globe, and brought their emphasis on voter education to the internet with the creation of Democracy Network, aimed at providing election information. In the 21st century, the League continues to promote voter education, voters' rights, campaign finance reform, civil liberties, and the protection of the environment, among other issues. In the last few months, our local league has been active in providing voter education on the large number of ballot measures, and in the coming months, we plan to host events on the issues of homelessness, climate change, and community engagement and policing. Once again, we'd like to thank you all for joining us here today. Up next, we'll continue the celebration with Long Beach's high schoolers. First, we'll have the Folklorico dancers from Jordan High School, and I'd like to introduce Octavio Mojica to introduce this group. Thank you.
Although the 19th Amendment was ratified in August 1920, granting American women the right to vote, a very important event, I might add. This has also set the stage for other countries to seek similar rights that they didn't have at the time. In Mexico, it wasn't until 1947, 27 years later, where Mexican women were granted suffrage rights at a national level. This event was very important as it recognized the contributions of women in society in general. During the 60s in the US, the Chicano or Mexican American movement inspired the Chicano youth to reconnect with their roots, their culture, and their ancestors. women embrace leadership, and for many, the learning and performing folkloric dances, predominantly choreographed by women, empower them and inspire them. Folkloric dances usually used as courtship, transformed during this era, as often it was an expression of culture. This is true with La Raspa, a folkloric dance that it was original from Veracruz, Mexico, a very cultural, rich dance. Performed by women with a mixture of Aztec, Mayan, Yaqui, African, and European movements, sacred and secular, forged together by many cultures through the centuries. Please welcome the Jordan High School Latin American Student Society in La Raspa, the Raspy Song, with the music of Mariachi Vargas de Tecalitlan and choreographed by yours truly. Thank you. Our next number is going to be a bachata dance. Bachata is a social dance from the Dominican Republic with roots of Afro-Dominican culture, predominantly from Angola, Africa, slaves. In the 1960s, bachata began to be socially accepted, but with many difficulties in the 1970s. Society saw it as negative because mainly it was played on bordels, and as it was the only place that bachateros or bachata bands could play it at the time. In the 1980s, it began to have its second chance as it became more popular, and is still popular with essential movements, and is now popularized all around the world, with emphasis in love and breakups. Please welcome the Latin American Student Society as they will perform a bachata dance titled Odio or Hate, with music by Romeo Santos featuring Drake and choreographed by Jessica Suchite and Brandy Rojas.
Yeah. Envy.
Our next number is a merengue number. Merengue dance was born in the Dominican Republic as well by enslaved laborers from the sugar beet fields. Due to the chain strap in their ankles, the laborers tried to make their day bearable by dancing and dragging their feet movement in a beater movement, which it resembles the egg beater batter, forming merengue. Hence the name merengue. The songs usually resemble personal relationships, or making emphasis in the different versions of whatever was around them to distract them from the hardships of enslavement. Now, this dance has become very popular in the Dominican Republic and also the US and around the world. Please welcome the Latin American Student Society as they will perform a dance called La Vaca, the cow, with music by Mala Fe and choreographed by yours truly. Thank you.
Wilson High School student Avery Hobart doing Sojourner Truth's famous speech, Ain't I a Woman?
This speech was delivered by Sojourner Truth almost 30 years before the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Well, children, there is so much racket that there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women of the North, all talking about rights, the white men will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me my best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I've plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Then they talk about this thing in the head. What's that they call it? Intellect. That's it, honey. What's that got to do with women's rights or Negroes' rights? If my cup won't hold but a pint and yours a quart, when I cry, wouldn't you be mean not to let me have my little half measure full? That little man in the back there, he says that women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down, these women together ought to be enough to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they're asking to do it. The men better let them. Obliged to you for hearing me. An old sojourner ain't got nothing else to say.
On stage, we have Women of Note, Carla Strandberg, choral director.
Some days we forget to look around us. Some days we can't see the joy that surrounds us. So caught up inside ourselves, we take when we should give. So for tonight we pray for what we know can be, and on this day we hope for what we still can't see. It's up to us to be the change, and even though we all can still do more, there's so much to be thankful for. Look beyond ourselves, there's so much sorrow. It's way too late to say I'll cry tomorrow. Each of us must find our truth. It's so long overdue. So for tonight we pray for what we know can be, and every day we hope for what we still can't see. It's up to us to be the change, and even though we all can still do more, there's so much to be thankful for. Even with our differences, there is a place we're all connected. Each of us can find each other's
Coming to the podium next is our very own Assembly Member Patrick O'Donnell, representing District 70.
Great, well, thank you. That was beautiful, wasn't it? And to Avery Halber, she's out there still. I see her right there. Yeah, you are a woman. You did a great job. You did a great job. You make me proud, having seen you growing up. But really, today we're celebrating the right of women to vote for sure, but really I think it's also about the empowerment of women. We celebrate our greats like Susan B. Anthony, Katie Stanton for sure, but also really empowering women. And we know that that didn't stop when women got the right to vote. Do you agree? It's an ongoing process. I think we've learned that, during this election cycle, we've really seen a lot of that, at least from my perspective we have. Listen, I have 2 young girls at home, a classroom teacher for over 20 years. My job for many years has been to empower women inside the classroom and outside of the classroom, and so that they can make our world a better place. And as your voice in Sacramento, I got to be honest with you. Oftentimes in Sacramento, when you bring a woman into the room, a female legislator, they bring a bit of reason to the conversation, and it isn't always about who's going to win, but it's often about how we can all win. So with that, I just want to thank you agree? I agree. And why that is, I don't know, but it is true. I can say that from personal experience. So I just thank Mr. Malveaux, certainly, for putting this on today, his whole team. Great day. Give him a hand. Give him a hand. His whole team for putting today on and really celebrating again the empowerment of women, which didn't end with the right to vote. It continues on today. And with that, just thank you for all coming out and celebrating each other as well. Thank you.
Next, Dominique Bell from the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Long Beach Alumni Chapters.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for coming out. My name is Dominique Renee Bell, and I am the 11th president of Long Beach Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a public service organization founded on Christian principles by 22 brave, dynamic, bold, and beautiful college-educated Black women on the campus of Howard University on January 13th, 1913. The Long Beach Alumni Chapter became the 763rd chapter of the sorority and was chartered by 31 visionary members in Long Beach on February 23rd, 1986. The Long Beach Alumni Chapter has been dedicated to providing public service for over 30 years to the residents in the community of the greater Long Beach area, which includes Long Beach, Lakewood, Signal Hill, Paramount, and shares Seal Beach, Bellflower, and Los Alamitos. Our membership comprised of over 80 members who are diverse in age, background, skills, and professions, but we all share the common bond of sisterhood, scholarship, and service. Our projects are based on the sorority's national 5-point programmatic thrusts: economic development, educational development, international awareness and involvement, physical and mental health, and political awareness and involvement. Some of Long Beach Alumni Chapter's programs are the Dr. Betty Shabazz Academy for Girls ages 11 to 14, Delta Gems programs for girls ages 14 to 18, Embody for young men ages 12 to 18. We offer financial aid workshops for students, financial fortitude workshops for adults. We've committed to voter registration drives, Thanksgiving basket giveaways, feeding the less fortunate, Christmas toy drives, adopt a school, participation in the Long Beach Martin Luther King Parade, and many, many more. We also have fundraisers throughout the year that we would love to have you support us at, including our Big Red Bus in December, Applebee's Pancake Breakfast in February, and our Visions of Hope Signature Scholarship Breakfast in April. Just like the weather, there is nothing that will stop a group of strong Delta women from getting the job done. We show up and we show out because it's in our nature. We are a movement and not a monument. But enough about us. Let me take you back, all the way back to 1913, when 22, and I said 22, conscious young Black women decided that they wanted to make a difference and be the change in the world that they wanted to see. They rolled up their sleeves and they put on their best dresses and boots. They gathered their Delta banner and decided that that day they would make some history. They went out on March 13th, 1913 as their first public act and marched in the Women's Suffrage March down Washington's Pennsylvania Avenue on the eve of Woodrow Wilson's inauguration. Having the right to vote at that time for women meant protection from sexual exploitation, an increase in higher education for all women, support in the workforce, the enfranchisement of Black men, and in Southern states, the end of white supremacy. To these courageous 22, votes for women meant votes for Black women too. Black women like Ida B. Wells and her Alpha Suffrage Club were not allowed to march in Illinois unless they decided to march all the way in the back of the group. It was definitely going to be a challenge for those young Deltas to march in Washington. It was only through their association with Miss Mary Church Terrell, one of the most influential Negro leaders of social, cultural, and intellectual life in Washington, who later became the first honorary member of the sorority, who helped these 22 young women gain approval from their administration at Howard University to participate in this march. Besides the drawbacks, such as lack of support from their peers, parents, professors, and the university dean, these 22 took a stand when many women, regardless of color, would not. News reports that there were between 5,000 and 10,000 participants, women from all walks of life, all colors and fashions, and more than 250,000 onlookers cheered that day. But March 13th, 1913 was not an easy day for our illustrious founders. People laughed at them, threw things at them, yelled racial slurs at them, and attacked those participating in the march. The 22 had to fight their way from the start, and it took them more than 1 hour to walk 10 blocks. The National Guard and hundreds of police were called in, but those 22, they never gave up. They persevered. They reached their goal. They handled themselves with grace. But the Deltas, oh, those Deltas, they refused to take their place at the tail end. They broke that tradition and accepted whatever criticisms came along with participating in the Women's Suffrage March in 1913. Those were the days when women were seen and not heard. But they marched that day in order to see women one day come into their own. They believed that women had a broader horizon and that the right to vote might bring them that privilege. So on March 13, 1913, that was the day that Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated took a stand and went from being citywide to nationwide to an international organization. It is on their shoulders that we stand. It is on the shoulders of women like Patricia Roberts Harris, Barbara Jordan, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Shirley Chisholm, the unbought and unbossed diva that in 1972 became the first African-American woman and the first female candidate for a major political party's nomination for president of the United States. It is on their shoulders that we stand. We are here today, and we are here every day to let you know that Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Long Beach Alumni Chapter is here to improve the community through service, leadership, and empowerment. I hope my words today gave you more insight to who we are and all that we do. Keep your eyes out for the red, ladies and gentlemen. Have a blessed day.
On stage, we have from Poly High School, Grace. Choral Director, Lori Grace. Give him a round of applause.
Hi, we're Long Beach Poly's Grace Choir. We're honored to be at this event for you. We're going to be singing Brighter Day by Kirk Franklin and You Made a Way by Travis Green.
League of Women Voters Long Beach area was honored to partner with Music Untold to present this celebration honoring the long fight for equality at the ballot box. For more information on the League of Women Voters informative events and how to get involved with this 101-year-old grassroots organization, please go to lwvlongbeach.org. All events are free to the public and chock full of information on topics that are important in our community and beyond. Help us to continue the League of Women Voters for another 100 years. Music Untold is a multidisciplinary organization devoted to presenting arts and educational programs that promote diversity and human dignity. To learn more, visit musicuntold.com. My name is Lisa Andrea. Thank you for watching.